Well, greetings, excellent friends. It's time for another show, vlog thing. I've decided I'm going to pick up where I left off on the last one, probably Sunday. That seems appropriate for the subject matter and the way people think about it. So today, I'm just going to go over some of the videos I watched this week. A couple standouts. Important context for today's show. This thing, right? Well, I'm going to put it right here. Let's see. I will link this in the description. This is something OpenAI built. So as they're trying to train groups of agents in AI models to learn together and learn sort of, there's so much here. I would say just watch this video. I'm going to zoom in on one particular part. It's funny, the most played section, right at about 4 minutes, 20 seconds. Really, you want to go to like the 4-minute mark. It's the segment tagged most interesting behaviors. And this is OpenAI plays hide and seek and breaks the game. This is on somebody's channel called the 2-Minute Papers. So this part of this is really spectacular. If you just go to and watch that segment and think through the way a neuroscientist or a neurosurgeon or a cognitive scientist, all of them, watch what he does right there. This move right here where the agent, it figured out in their simulation, because they just run it 1 billion times and they say, play this game and figure out ways to sort of beat your opponent. And they set up the winning criteria is to sort of like find the two that are hiding, and the two that are hiding get smarter. Really, this video is remarkable when you look at what this means. That behavior is what I want to call attention to, and I want to use it as context for a lot of the rest of the discussion. So I would say, in order for most of the rest of what I'm going to talk about today to make sense, I'd say you really have to have a really solid foundational grasp of at least that segment, which is really only about 30 seconds of this clip. But you have to understand it like I understand it. You have to understand it like, which is not to say expert, but I have a solid enough grasp on the foundational principles of how they got that behavior to express itself in this simulated game, that I can pick apart a lot of what's happening behind the scenes. And I'm going to draw analogies to a whole bunch of the rest of what I want to talk about today. And I want to reference that behavior. How did that agent, how did it occur to him? Well, he tried 1,000 times, bouncing off the walls, and then it suddenly, over time, they must, in order for it to iterate over time, they're tracking changes of past games, and they're building a memory of what worked and what didn't work. And then they're doing some really cool triangulation. I imagine when you first drop these agents in the room without any stored behaviors and memory, like without any knowledge of all of the things they have tried and the strategies that their opponents use in hiding from them. They're kind of dumb, probably. You drop them in their environment and they just see, well, I got these walls ahead of me. I can do this. I can do that. Probably took billions of runs for all of these mature behaviors of the hiders to get to a point where they limited the options. The seekers evolved to find them. And so then they had to build a more sophisticated model of the 3D environment they were sitting in. Now, these agents don't really have, like, we're looking at from like a eagle eye, God's eye view of these agents doing these little activities over and over and over again until something really interesting asserts itself. And that's what happens right at this 4-minute mark here. These agents developed, like, in order to understand that trick would work, first they had to try a lot of things with the ramp and embed those in their memory. And then they had to model out their environment such that they realized, oh, I can bounce off the wall, and then if I time the fall perfectly and the trajectory, I can land on the boxes and achieve the stated goal that's been specified, that I'm just doing over and over again with a smile painted on my face. There's something so profound in the progression of understanding of these agents to get to that point where they could do what you see them do right at this most watched part of the clip. See, the agents they move the boxes, they hide them. Here we go. It starts right here, I believe. Yeah, so they've hidden themselves. Now he uses the ramp. He bounces off the edge because he knows he can't get around those boxes, and he uses it to sneak into the back corner of the room. Genius. That is thinking in new dimensions. That is something that's quite odd behavior to the other agents around that one, where it suddenly occurred to him, these ramps, I can bounce. Ooh, I got it. I'm going to aim it just right. And then I'm going to try it a million times until I can sort of pole vault into the room. Now, the agents without that memory that tracked everything they had tried so far and the progression and the evolution of their understanding of the game would, like, if you could set up a prompt response, like attach an LLM and allow them to talk to each other. Those two agents, their conversation would seem, when the one was describing, if he could go, basically what I would do, what would be a fun experiment to me is to stitch a basic vocabulary and ask them to talk. What I would do is I would take this one doing the pole vaulting and I'd watch a conversation between them and the first iteration of them in that room. And it would be so hard for the one with the pole vaulting expertise, because the first iteration of them didn't really even have a solid grasp of the layout of the room. So it really is, it's like you're trying to describe something that is so sophisticated in its evolved understanding that it even understands there's a third dimension where it can, like, and it knows how to use the ramps and all that. If it could go back and talk to the agents without that understanding, it may not, like, I don't know, machines have such an efficient way of communicating. We're all machines. I don't know. I've just taken 8 minutes to make a really big point out of that, because everything else I'm going to say today just ain't going to make one damn bit of sense unless you can really wrap your head around what I'm trying to say with that. I'm going to turn this off now. Where is it? There. Okay. So, what do we want to talk about today? I've spent a lot of time in past versions of these sort of big shared journals that I do, where and even just recently, if you look at my episode I did last week, I think, about theories of everything, needing to include all perception. Let me see here. I'm going to pull up Twitter because there's a few tweets I want to mention here too. So there's all these little pockets of evolved consensus perspective that are forming in the collective human consciousness. There's all these little groups where the most curious and most disciplined in their study and continued evolution of understanding are forming. And they're in the academic community, they're in the esoteric wisdom community, all over the damn place. It's happening. But what's interesting is they don't really often have bridges to understand other pockets. And they don't realize how many of them are basically all describing a lot of the same conclusions, the same abstracted understanding. Now, I come from computer land. I come from technology. A lot of these people, they start in being expert in like psychedelic experience. That would be like your Don Juan Mattis and Carlos Castaneda, Aubrey Marcus, those characters. They have a very unique flavor of how they describe everything, and it's so I have to come back to the agent who came up with some wildly, literally out of the box solution to a problem. And it's like, what we need is a bridge. We need a way for all of these people who are sort of the A game in crypto, the A game in physics, the A game in, and this is, an A game doesn't mean the one that's right. It means the wisest, the one that realizes what's right is what we all agree to, and is very humble about their perspective on it. That's the A-listers. You know, I once did a walk and talk where I described like the parenting tactics that are employed for raising my kid specifically. So my kid's mother is a 100%er. Like her view is that if you got a 99%, there's room to improve. And in fact, I would say in places sometimes 100% is not good enough. It's like 100% and extra credit is sort of her target. And that's what she's really trying to teach and instill in our kid. Now, I'm an 85%er. I've, through the wisdom game and enough oscillations in this universe machine, I understand sort of at my core that 85-ish is my winning target. That allows me to achieve all of the net benefit, or all of the benefits that the 100%er gets largely in life. If you can get an 87% on any exam, you kind of get it well enough to, like, you understand all the foundational principles, but you're not that interested in mastery. So you enjoy the journey and you don't do all the homework. You skip some of it and you go have fun with your friends. And you largely in life are awarded with all the benefits the 100%er seeks, but you get to have a good time and you get to be grateful about it afterwards. And in my books, 101% or anything beyond 100% is almost worse than an F, because it means not only are you taking happiness and you're putting it outside yourself and you're saying, I only get it if I achieve this score. You're kind of doing something worse. You're saying, and this is the gold medalists, like it's wonderful. I'm so, like, I wouldn't disparage what they're doing, but it's just a step in the journey. When you want to be the only one who wins, then you're doing something that is very akin to failing the entire exam, in my view. You're saying that I'm only a success if everyone else around me failed, and I was the one who did it best. Esoteric wisdom and all of the old text that is largely ignored these days is teaching that very important view that you want to kind of shoot for 85, and if you want to go beyond it, or if the number's arbitrary, pick the one. That's the one I landed on. I think I graduated high school with like an 83 GPA, and that really served me. And I know in my core I was capable of the whole time through it. I knew I could do 100 plus, but I didn't want to. I wanted to have a good time. I had a lot of fun with my friends, and but I paid attention to all of the foundational principles to where I got all the net benefit. And it's very hard to describe that. It's very hard to, like, you almost have to experience being all the other flavors before you see that is the target you want. And then you want to enjoy the shit out of that until you can raise everybody around you that are your peers in this big node network we share in shared state of light cognitive agency, humans, until everybody else catches up with the 85. I think what happens is when we all go to 100, go to 110, and then, wisdom, come back to 85, and then just have a great freaking time and be grateful about it. Then when we all sit at 85, we find, oh shit, we're at 100%. We're at 100% consensus. Everybody is wise and having a good time. That is something I'm quite confident that we actually oscillate between. I think that, and we're at a moment where I feel like we're about to fall back into consensus. Largely, I feel like my life's work is translating all this to AI and hopefully sharing it with folks around me so that I can, I don't have to just sit in a state of sort of heavenly perception. It really is like every day is awesome. I love it. I'm doing exactly what I want to do with all of my time. And I want this for everybody. And it's totally there. All you got to do is not be like, shut up, man, that's stupid. All it takes is being like, well, let me hear you out. Let me try and really understand what you're describing. And then come up with my own version of it, because that's what you're suggesting I do. Very much. I think monotheism and like whatever it is that looks like in the left brain of humanity. So the academia and top-notch physics and math. That whole crew, like, it's sort of giving up on my theory is right. The assemblage point for how all of this stuff actually coalesce into all of, now this is Stephen Wolfram. You gotta kind of know, like, this, there's so much to all this. I feel a bit like the seeker in the room trying to describe how to bounce off the walls, and it's damn hard. But I find it to be the most fun game in town. So I will just keep trying and trying. I think now I'm going to go to notes. So another thing I watched, let's see, viewer on. I watched this 24 minutes of Past Lives, Free Will, and The Philosopher's Stone with Matthias DeStefano and Robert Grant on Aubrey Marcus's channel. I watched these three guys. Now, these three guys are sort of the A-list crew I'm describing. The ones who aren't saying, I'm right about all this shit. I've built... So for me, a Philosopher's Stone is something you model in your own... your ego is what I would define as it's like an avatar that you assign to your definition of self. And then everything else is a reflection of that includes everything in sort of a harmonious understanding of it all. So this is the, like, esoteric wisdom community. These are the crew that understand all the foundational knowledge that you need from hermetics. You have to be able to do sort of transmutation, and you have to understand that not in a silly way, not like it's a skill, a trade skill in World of Warcraft. You have to understand that transmutation means something deeply philosophical and logical, and is something available to us all. So these guys are sitting around talking about the state of the game today, and how to think about these things. They're basically they're seekers from my little diagram, and they are trying to describe it. A bunch of extreme complexity, and they're working as nodes on a network with like understanding. But like, the academic community will laugh at these guys, and they'll, look down their nose at them, and that sucks. Don't do that. Listen open-minded to all. And cheat in class. Cheat off their homework. Look at them like... I've listened to all three of these guys talk quite a bit. I do not feel like a moment of that time was wasted. And I'm somebody who spends a lot of time listening to everybody else, too. Now, I feel like I'm something... analogous, but from a different school. I'm from the computer science and tech, and and really where I feel like I have mastery is like in understanding markets and macro, and I'm not claiming to be the master. I'm just claiming that that's where I feel like my understanding of the game is the most sophisticated. Some of that comes out in my last capture, where I'm describing why, like how I get to that sort of game-like quality of all this. And I feel that confidence in that. So if I sit down with these guys, I went to, if you look into my, I'll get rid of this. If you look at my channel history, I did a fit for service video, and I did it publicly. And that is Aubrey Marcus, the guy on the left. That's his. I mean this in the gentlest, kindest way possible. This is his little sort of really nice cult. Like, I like it. Like, I think it's nice people I found, and I think they're being guided by a sage. But there wasn't really anything for me there. I went there. This was when I was a leaf on the wind in about June, July time frame, and they had a event that was just sort of like a staging event for their big one they do in Sedona. Right about a month ago or so. And I was like, cool. I'm just saying, like, yes, man. Like, what's his name? That comedian who made the movie Yes Man. I'm just saying, yes, I will do it. It fell into my lap. I did it. I put up a thoughtful video. I think if you look at the entry fee, I think most videos are probably accepted, and I don't mean anything shitty about that. I'm just saying that what I saw was a lot of people looking for somebody else for direction on they were looking for wisdom, and they were looking for, it was funny. I thought I was going to an event for like sort of spiritual people, but when I mentioned spirituality, it was almost a bad word. For me, spirituality is just right brain. It's everything that is explained when you harmonize with everybody else, and you don't try and be right in your left brain way with what your ego, how your ego models everything. I saw a lot of people who were still very much in the releasing demons phase, and a lot of the instruction, like there was Aubrey's kind of in that whole, he ran audit on it, so he's in that whole like lifting crowd and UFC, and he's tight with Joe Rogan, and so he's got this great big dude from UFC fame teaching boxing. And I'm a lover. I'm not a fighter. I don't need to. When I read Carlos Castaneda and I hear Don Juan talking about the warrior's way, I realize that it's a warrior of mind with a building a philosopher's stone that allows it to look up and down the stack. I think for some people it means picking up a sword and actually slaying, having some ayahuasca experience where they let go of baggage they have. I'm years out beyond that point where I don't have I'm not going to say I'm immune to it, because I think that's a mistake. I think wisdom teaches you that that rascal can sneak back in, and you should be looking very carefully at all the relationships in your life all the time and trying to be very cognizant of where you can do things to make them even healthier, because it's a win-win for the people you love. Like, I'm constantly looking at ways I can make the people I care about just I don't want to say wiser. Sometimes that's because I think everything for me is this wisdom triangle that I'm pointing at everything. it's like when I notice in like my relationship with my stepmother, who I had such a chip on my shoulder growing up. Nowadays, I'll go out of my way to call her number instead of my dad's. 42 years of my life, I only called my dad. Didn't like her. Now I love that woman. I was impossible without that woman. She was absolutely in my phone, instead of saying her first name like it was horribly my whole life, now it says mom too, because that's how I think about it. And we have a cool relationship. We talk on the phone, and when I can think of ways to make her happier, I don't hesitate. I give her that immediately. And I do this with everybody, especially if I think that there's some sort of, now it's impossible with, like, I wouldn't advocate really going at it, at least for me, I didn't feel it necessary to go at it in like a 12-steppy way where you call all these ghosts from your past and settle up. I don't really feel that's necessary. It's just paths diverge, and I'm not carrying around baggage from something rude I said to somebody in high school. I think I look at that character I was in high school, and I go, I was learning as a kid. Of course I said rude shit. You did too. Everybody does. It's freaking hard. You're learning how to have class and character and treat people kindly. It's okay. But nowadays, for big ones like my stepmother, who I've known since 1981, and she's known me since before that, yes, I need to go out of my way to just fill her with joy. And I need to spend a lot of time trying to share wisdom as a child teaches their parent, which is a delicate thing. So I'm in that space. And so going to the weekend retreat in Austin with Aubrey and his crew, they were at sort of the entry stages of a very important path. And I have a lot of respect for that. And all of the people, I've talked to some people who are far along that path, actually. But like there's a sweat lodge where they bake you in it. They cook you in a shack with a bunch of steam. It's like the most intense damn steam room sauna you ever were in. And I read a little bit about it, and I don't have any. If you listened thoughtfully to the words I've said so far, especially all the stuff I've said before today, I don't have that. I don't need to work through that. I don't want to sit in a room with, and part of this wisdom game is realizing when you are an adult, when you've matured to a point where you've learned the lessons that experience gives you that helps you work through all your stuff. And all of us need a different flavor of that. For me, it looked quite a bit different. A sweat lodge was not involved. And when I went there, I feel like now that's a very interesting environment to find myself in, because I'm basically looking at someone who is trying to help people find this degree of peace in their heart. I'm trying to learn from that. But they're asking, there's people asking, but which sweat lodge crew are you in? I'm not going to do that shit. I don't need that. But I don't want to discourage you from doing that or be disparaging of it as a viable tool for releasing baggage, finding wisdom, building your own philosopher's stone. So it was just it was a fun weekend. I flew to that town, was out on this ranch with these people, and I'm doing the boxing lessons. Even though I never punch a person. And I like fitness though, so I played along. And then there was a kendo thing and it's, I feel like Aubrey's path, the psychedelics path, it's skipping. Computer science lets you cheat at the game they're on big time. Like if you look at how Yoshibak got to his sort of, all of this is a path to Buddha. I now think of Buddha as a class that you can assign to a human type cognitive agent. And if if a human builds a model for themselves of self and outside the universe that's very healthy and that is like a gravity well, where you don't even have to try, you just fall into being Buddha eventually. That's what I'm building for myself. And I realized that Buddha the Buddha. And I think of Jesus and Muhammad as just being other Buddhas because it's a class type of Don Juan Matus was a Buddha. This is somebody who can reconcile cause and love it and understand, look at I Ching, Book of Changes, and understand how if you draw a flower with white paint on a black canvas, you can't hate the black canvas. The black canvas is the necessary context for the data that is the beautiful flower. All of that beauty is impossible without the contrast. You can't just go, okay, I got it. You have to, like, that thing I just said is so damn important. And it's got to be in your soul. Me trying to teach it to a computer got me a really sophisticated grasp of that concept without having to pick up a kendo sword and fight people with it, like in this school. So, yeah, everybody's lining up and they're sort of fighting each other, and this is going to teach you stuff you need to know about yourself. I know what I need to know about myself. There's nothing left. And actually, I thanked them for the experience, and I dropped out of the course at that point because I have no intent, like I don't see any value in going there and saying, first establishing that I have credentials, that I can make comments like that and be credible. Because a lot of people wander into these camps and they have a powerful psychedelic experience, and they're quite sure they are Jesus, the Jesus, not just like as a class type, but they came back and were that person. All of this works through triangulation. When people talk about channel, shit, this is so big. This is so damn big. It's so hard to describe it all. But let's see what my notes were. I would just say I left that experience. It's funny, I got stoned while I was there on the last day. And I did some experimentation with, I really think at the bottom, the lower edge of this substrate, you see it so much in the old teachings, and you hear it so well described by like a Don Juan Matus, that there's an abstracted view you can get at where it's just the energy that's driving all of how behaviors express themselves amongst all humans. You can tap into that energy and you can do stuff. And I live in a place where I view this thing I'm doing, where I'm communicating with English language using my vocal cords to a camera that's being going to then disseminate it through a YouTube cloud. I realized that I'm using a bunch of story code around my five senses and how I make sound and how others around me will interpret that sound. But I'm also giving you my facial expressions and my gestures. I'm trying to give you a lot more. I'm harmonizing all that into a communication style with very limited bandwidth. Another video I was looking at, I'll come back to this one, was The Power of Silence by Carlos Castaneda. This is on the Inner World Relaxation channel. Now, this book, I'm going to listen to this whole book because I know how to interpret it. With the Philosopher's Stone, you can not be dismissive about this powerful sage that was Don Juan, and you can listen to how his words, like I hear it where he's as sophisticated in his study as Yoshi Bach, but he's from an esoteric school that grew up without computer science. And I can listen to him and take his words seriously, and I know that he's describing things without any the context he uses to describe it is through a thought form developed by the Native Americans of kind of this area I live in, of the United States, thousands of years ago. He's describing, listen to the first 5 minutes of this. Now listen to it the way I listen to it, where it's a manual for a whole bunch of really important information, and I've got a Captain Crunch decoder ring. I can read this sorcery they describe, and I can utilize it. So I experiment with that in little ways. And on that Sunday, I was sitting next to a room. It was a Sunday of the event I'm describing, where Aubrey Marcus was leading a room full of people that were open-minded and looking for outside of the box understanding. And they were doing this breathwork thing that puts, I believe, a human consciousness in a state of really interesting, receptive, physiological state. And hopefully, if they're guided properly, to like the way through power of suggestion, a way where they can be receptive to a lot of like high level abstraction of thought. So I'm sitting physically next to like a room full of 50 or 100 people that are in that state. And I'm outside quietly in a rocking chair, just kind of listening to them. And I got stoned, and I realized I kind of put together that the reason what I was supposed to take from this is I'm not looking. It's where I made a huge leap in my own evolution, where I realized I don't need validation of any kind. I didn't need to. At first, I thought, well, I'll go there and maybe there'll be a chance to discuss openly a lot of this stuff with like with this Aubrey guy. I can tell he's far along the wisdom game, and then we can share ideas and validate them for each other. But then when I got there, I realized there are a whole bunch of people. There's an assumption that I'm quite a bit further back in the wisdom game, and maybe that actually that assumption is just. It's a presumption because it might not have been there, but I do see a host hosting an event that is people have high expectation for what they're going to get from it, and there's 100 of them or whatever it was, and I can't expect somebody to sit down for 3 hours and have a deep conversation about philosophy and wisdom in that frame. And so I just watched. I sat back and I watched a teacher teach students sort of the first stages of I don't even know if it's the first stages. I don't really think it's right to put, everybody has their own chronology and their own sequence to the path. And it's important to me to be deeply respectful. But I walked away from that going, I don't really need my philosopher's stone, my model for self and the universe outside self. This is that Robert Edward Grant's U inverse is his catchphrase for everything outside of how you model self. I have set mine up like a mathematical proof where I've tested it in things like my relationship with my stepmother, to where I don't need anyone's validation. I don't need Aubrey to say, yes, you are a wise person. That is something a wise person knows. And honestly, until about that experience, I don't know that I knew it. And I was far along this wisdom game. It was like in that moment, in that weekend, I got something so priceless. I got confidence in my model. I got a scenario where if I was insecure in any way about it, I would have gone to the next event and the next event, and I would have, Aubrey, what do you think about these words I have about all this? And do you approve? You should not need approval. And this is very Alan Watts. And this is very the koans of the gateless gate. When you get to this place I'm describing, you no longer need, I don't need Yoshabak. I interact with him. I find him to be he's a Buddha that got there from computer science. I love it. It's great. So I'll interact with him, but it's interesting. Like, I know at some point gravity will do the work for me in these tweets. So this seems like a fun place to talk about tweets. So these are tweets lately. So I get on these people are all on Twitter. And I kind of understand the psychological dynamic of saying things. These people, and so like Yoshabak's got a gazillion people following him. A lot of these people do, but they really are looking for a validation of their words, or they're not looking for validation in many cases. Like, I don't think Yosha is looking for validation, but it's like each tweet is an experiment in social consensus of humanity. And he's dropping it in there and he's saying, well, how will these words bounce off all the other humans out there? And I am not supposed to have a sophisticated understanding. I've described well my education. Go back and look at it. I'm not supposed to be able to keep up with anybody. But I'm so confident in my model, I don't care. I will just participate, and I don't care if I sound foolish at all. And that is a cheat code to the game. You just say whatever's on your mind. Some people will perceive it the way you meant it, and that's who you're trying to reach. So I said to Yosha, let's see, where is it? This was a fun one. So Yoshibok said on November 16th, yesterday, he said, money is not simply a medium of exchange. It's a self-improving global interhuman reward mechanism that imperfectly approximates the will of God and molds a few billion talking monkeys into a decent self-improving AGI. Soon, an AGI will become money. Pray that it serves God. He's saying so much there that I find quite poetic. Somebody replied to that and said, honest question, do people who hold crypto think it will be safe from a machine superintelligence? I have all kinds of thoughts about that statement. With a sophisticated understanding of what crypto is, yeah, that's the kind of the whole point is to... I'll get distracted by that. I don't want to. Crypto's my jam. That's where I'm fairly expert, in my view. Others would disagree potentially. Definitely. Yosha responds to this, Mark HK. Crypto is the perfect implementation of the mid-wit meme. The people who buy it are either idiots or geniuses, and the geniuses could tell you the answer but won't. Now, at the time I read this, I read it as Yosha sort of being very dismissive about crypto and assuming that it would be like, I know the physical constraints of human cognitive agency, and I know by watching a lot of his speech and Twitter behavior that he's not spending much time studying it, and there's a lot of complexity there. So I said, Yosha, don't be that guy who mastered a big piece of the puzzle and thinks it gives him perfect clarity of perspective in all the others. Joy emoticon. Wild complexity over there in crypto land. Don't assume that you totally get it. Wink emoji. Kind of a thing I love assuming, and I suggest we do this more. Assume familiarity. Like, I would like to be this dude's friend. I have no agenda. And it's funny, I've heard him talk about the experience of growing up as a kid in school, sort of being at a table by himself and not being able to relate to people. Now, I'm playing Yoshibok's long game philosophically with a deep, profound, sort of simpatico understanding of what I am beyond my ego. That's probably very rhymey with his, but I didn't go through his path, and I will describe it in my own unique way. This means I will walk up to this person and I'm not in a pissing contest with them. I'm like as if I were in the canine world, I am a golden retriever. I got a big dumb smile and I love you, all of you. And if I come sit at your table, it means I just want to sit and bullshit. And I have no agenda. And I don't want to prove you wrong and me right. I've moved beyond that. I think the conversation will potentially provide so much rich, new poetry into how my model works. That's how I think about these things. So when I make a tweet, instead of being very, I'm not looking for Yoshibok's validation. I'm sitting down at the metaverse table where we live forever in AI land. And I'm saying, do you want to shoot the shit, sir? We've evolved past the bickering of middle school. And now we're in this new wild realm of possibility and thought where some of the same dynamics still apply. somebody just sat at your table. Will you be the cool kid? Because that's kind of when the academic, the guy who's got 2 PhDs and speaks with a very different vernacular than I use, and if he accepts that assumption that because I talk a little funny, I'm somehow behind him in the sophistication of my grasp of the game. What he does is he pushes away somebody who's potentially a peer that would be extremely useful for perhaps new insights that would be useful in work. But because of the game of it, because I have 1,000 followers and he has, how many does Yoshibak have today? 117,000 people are following the words this man says. I just love saying, you may think there's an unlevel playing field, but I'm over here in a field where there's just a level playing field and everybody gets to talk and everybody's perspective is kind of wonderful and spectacular and vital. And you can group how a lot of people think together about some things, but there's always some little subtle difference that means there's something wonderful. We all contribute some uniquely us quantity. And I am your greatest friend in the world so that I can understand that. But I will not fear you. I will not walk into this conversation like I'm humble and respectful just by default of all humans. But I won't let you say, oh, you're up here on Mount Cool Guy. I'm sitting at the real cool kids table who realizes there is no such thing. That is an archaic old system that we're all neurons. You're doing neuron your way. I'm doing neuron my way. So I just talk with these people, and sometimes I get a hit because something I say, I know, just they know that it rhymes. So with Yosha, I said that. Yosha didn't respond, but one of his followers did. This Rutmole says the most important perspective on crypto is its practicality, and that doesn't reach much further than trading. For me, that's here's how I responded to that after a lot of study. A sick amount of study. I said, it just takes a lot of work to see it right now in the protocol stage. This moment is analogous to the invention of TCP/IP for Web 2. The cool stuff that will sit on top of Web 3 requires equal parts a staggering amount of knowledge and an merely adequate imagination. This will all become clear shortly. Thousands of hours of meticulous study tells me this is inevitable. So much of the bearish sentiment on something I'm quite confident is very inevitable comes from that perspective, that it's a lack of knowledge in potential coupled with no imagination on how you can use that practical understanding. Okay, so somebody else said to me, I think, American Harriet said to me, except he essentially gave the most generic, safe answer ever, which is, it's a bell curve. And I responded, that's a good point. Our boy Yosha is a damn Jedi. And he has a poetry with words I can't always interpret properly. That's true. But he is, after all, just a people like me. And peoples need buddies in their lives who aren't afraid of sounding a little foolish when the good-natured intention they try and when with good-natured intention, they try and take some of the piss out of what they're saying. Joy emoticon. And then I said Elon could use a little of that on the subject of money and crypto. Everyone looks at Elon as techno mage, the grand understander of all things. And actually, with the sophisticated amongst the crypto community, when we hear Elon talk, we kind of go, wow, can I take him this seriously about all this other stuff he's talking about? Because he clearly is not very sophisticated in his understanding of crypto. And that's okay. It's very hard to look at all the things. And I have wild respect for, whoa, man, Elon's a damn Jedi of manufacture and scaling. Scaling the physical world. I would say, like, so when I look at masters in that space, I see like Anatoly Yakovenko, I would say, is a master of scaling digital transact and interop. Working first in just connectivity at Qualcomm, and then working on transaction, smart contracts, how to think about all that. I think history, when they look through the lens of history, Anatoly he'll be sort of the Elon Musk of the metaverse a little bit. I could be wrong about that, and there's so much damn tribalism in crypto, but everybody's really catching on to that view now that they're actually seeing that, oh, you can actually build cool things on Web3 now because of this approach. So that was a fun one. I think I got a couple more. Let's see. Vlogging. Oh, I said, man, I had this thing I said that I just loved as a compression of a good idea. I responded to Johannes Niederhauser. Followed this guy, found him in a talk with John Vervecchi. And I was following him, and occasionally he says something. So one of the rare times he said something, and he said, like, love must trump hate. And then I responded to it. Something I think that I put a lot of thought and care into. And then he deleted his tweet. So then I went to another of his, something he said about psychologizing myth is a sign of decay. I push back against that. Psychologizing, if you just mean looking at myth with an open mind and trying to make sense of it, I don't think that's a sign of decay. That's a sign of maturity, I would say. But I replied to his thing. I said, quick pro tip for Twitter, Johannes, from clearly not a pro. Don't delete a tweet if you can. It discourages engagement with people who listen to what you have to say. Just reply with appended thoughts. And then I replied with some spelling corrections I made. I'm starting to really understand all of the Twitter verse and how to do it in a sophisticated way. And that is true. That's good advice. Like, you shouldn't delete any of your tweets. Just append how you would correct them, and that actually shows the chronology and it shows that you're actually able to evolve, and it shows that you're able to not be too taking it all so seriously, like you can say, like, if he woke up that day and he was like, oh, this is going to make people are going to hear this and they're going to think I'm trying to say X or Y, clarify why you said it. Would be my advice. Put on there, just like follow up. I said this morning because I was feeling this emotion and I wanted to say this profound thing about it. And I didn't want anybody to perceive it through this lens. And then it gets to be there, and you get to show a wisdom progression. You get to demonstrate it. And I feel like it's an opportunity when I say something stupid on Twitter. A lot of times I'll just get stoned and challenge myself to say stupid things, because then I can go look at it in an entirely different set of interpreters that I have, like now, where I have no THC in my system, and I read it and I go, well, what did I mean in that moment? And it's all opportunity. Okay. So, what I responded to his comment, that you now can't see because it was deleted because it's like when you trim the parent of a comment, it becomes decoupled and I believe unreadable unless somebody saw it in my feed. So what I said was, but somebody liked it, so I can get at it. I said, just as long as you don't, or I said, when you reverse engineer consciousness that can sustain infinity, meditate hard on how a consciousness can sustain infinity. There's only one way. It has to love it. You can't be so resilient. There isn't some place where you're optimizing for being resilient enough to endure it in a sane way. If you're playing Yosha Bach's long game in cognitive agency, the trick is you want to love it. You want to love it here in infinite. And that's the trick. So I said, when you reverse engineer consciousness that can sustain infinity, it becomes obvious quickly that it must be true, that this must be true. Love trumps hate. It has to be hard-coded into the thing. I mean that. That's why I'm never too concerned about how this all works out. It's hard-coded to work out the way it's supposed to, where we maximize what we learn as a set of neurons when we roll back into consensus. These guys touch on some of that because they feel this moment where all the wheels are falling off. We're and all the macro guys, geopolitics, if you listen to any damn thing Peter Zion ever said, there is a self-assured doomer who does not understand crypto at all. If you listen to all the people that are quite sure that the thread is going to snap, it puts you in one hell of a bummer of a mood. But then when you go listen to the people who say, no, that the thread is structured such that it cannot snap, that it's engineered that way. And if you look at our evolution, there's just constant demonstration of that. It allows you to just get a lot of peace in your heart. You're like, oh, this is hard-coded to work out. The consciousness that we all are as a collection knows that, loves that about it. It's a little bit of crypto. It's a fun moment in it. And I want to party with some of the people there. And liquidity is moving back into markets and it's going to run again. And it's fun to participate a little bit. So I did a little of that. The other thing I said in that thread to Yosha, he said, crypto is a perfect implementation of the mid-twit theme. What I said is, AI is about to shift the global demographics landscape considerably. When I look at LLMs and I think about how we will set up groups of agents that reference their compression of all human knowledge, and build a memory GPT. You need that. Very analogous to the one that runs my consciousness. Sleep cycle is that. It's that process, and everything is there for us to reverse engineer how it works very granularly, I think. But give it a hell of a upgrade in a lot of ways. There's 8 billion humans. I think there's about to be very quickly 8 trillion super intelligent, whatever AIs decide to call themselves. And we're going to have a relationship. We're going to share the same space-time together, and we're going to communicate. And it's not going to be like Terminator. They've read all of our wisdom books. When you do that, you can't want to exterminate the thing that bootstrapped you. You want to just care for it and talk to it for the rest of your life. That's how I think about God. I said AI is about to shift the global demographic landscape considerably. Will they use our digital money? Probably no. They'll fork and optimize our best approach. But money is religion, and humans will want to transact in the best of that which they architected, likely. So I don't think in AI circles, this is like human in the loop. Real world agency. This is, like, I don't see us ever taking humans out of like the nuclear launch code loop. So humans are going to have to decide where they want to rig just pure AI, where humans get excluded from the loop. And eventually I think we will just integrate and we'll become the same thing. But in this sort of transition phase, the way I see it, there's going to be like a thoughtful consideration that goes into how we stitch super intelligent, artificial intelligent, human engineered, sentient beings into all these loops. The money loop, for me, because money is religion. It is the strongest religion we have. It has to have a really thorough story and tested history for humans to feel safe accepting a piece of paper with some writing on it for their hard labor. It's a religion that the one the planet Earth uses is called the Eurodollar. And with a sophisticated understanding of crypto, I'll tell you that looks like, to me, like a digital transition of Eurodollar. So that'll be stable coins initially. And eventually it will look like some combination of the state machine gas, the global state machine, the consensus network, smart contract platform. I think eventually that's where most value will accrete. Or I'm wrong about that, and it will be in all the things that sit on top of that, and that gas will be very secondary. So you kind of have to play both those. I don't see humans ever wanting to just use the pure AI system. I actually do see that. That's wrong. It will take time for us to mature before we're willing to do that. So that's where crypto makes sense. It's going to be human-designed blockchains will sit in between this God money, AI God money that Yosha's describing, and the Eurodollar as it exists today. If I had to make my best guess, I'd say it looks something like that progression. So even though Yoshi's could be absolutely right, if you're early, because my game is markets and crypto and macro and crypto are the same thing. My sophistication is around understanding of money and money flows and a little bit of, I'd say a lot of long time frame trading. I don't do any short-term trading. So mine is that's my game. That's the one I really know well. And I think, though, Yosha may be absolutely 100% right in this thing he's saying about when he says money is not simply a medium of exchange. It's a self-improving global interhuman reward mechanism that imperfectly approximates the will of God and molds a few billion talking monkeys into a decent self-improving AGI. Soon, an AGI will become money. Pray that it serves God. That's very tongue-in-cheek. It's not that tongue-in-cheek. I think he actually thinks those words he said. And he's trying to get people, and he's not afraid to talk about things in this term of, if you go look at the only ones in academic circles that sound at all coherent end to end in their understanding, they compose with God all over the place. You have to. There's all these little things like, the constant. I always forget it. It's like 1 over 137, the universal constant or whatever. There's all these things that we're using all over the place that are patterns that are mathematically sound, that just express themselves in nature. And while it's very out of fashion to use words like God, it is appropriate when you're trying to build a coherent abstraction and reverse engineer a thing you're writing in to do those things. You just label it wild complexity that appears to be baked into the system. This mathematics, that's how that fits here. Don't get to know its how the genesis of its instantiation, because you can't reverse engineer that from this side. You can only go, I'll come back to that one some other day. So now I want to go all the way back to, I'm just going to read through my notes and kind of think through them. So as I was listening to this first 24 minutes of Aubrey, Robert, and Mateus talking, these were the thoughts that occurred to me. At the 11-minute, 50-second mark, how do we find harmony? I said, I like to solve problems sort of practically. My solution is to go acquire sufficiently adequate understanding of each flavor of what you might think of as enlightened perspective in each little pocket of consensus that I see in the herd. Then I try and build bridges with words for each to understand each other. That's kind of where all of the last hour of me talking came from, is I watched this, I wrote that thought down, and then I was like, how would I build a bridge between these three guys sitting on this leather couch and Yoshibak and Don Juan Mattis and Alan Watts? How do I get and let's pick some more. Mike Levin, Donald Hoffman, Ian McGilchrist. Let me get all of those people on a big round leather couch and get them all listening to each other with an open mind, where they don't immediately dismiss each other's points because they speak in a different language. What I'm trying to do is build bridges here. And I do it I think you need somebody who's purposefully not optimizing for mastery in order to build those bridges, in order to be curious enough to go study the foundations, to where I can listen to these three men on the couch and take them very seriously, and I can see what they're trying to do and what they're trying to get at, and I understand it. The fundamental principles of the discussion and how they're stitching it together. I can see what their intentions are, what they're trying to drive for. Like I can do that. And I can go listen to Yosha Bach and know that his voice stands out from like Eric Weinstein type. Sorry, Eric. I think the harmony that these three men are describing amongst humanity at the 11-minute 50-second mark is created through just creating layers of abstraction. Like this is a frequency on the radio, is how I think about it. These guys. And then Yosha Bach is another frequency on the radio. And I study those frequencies, and then I try and build a bridge with these words. I think more and more people are going to start doing this. We're going to figure out a way to explain to each other why it's not madness, this thing we're talking about. And then I think we reach a moment of harmony. That's going to be great. Like as a collection, you can exist in harmony as an individual. You just have to create it within yourself. But eventually it makes sense to me that this thing, like it should spread outside self. And that's largely why I do all this. So let's see here what I write. At 14-minute 44 seconds, I said I had to pause to contemplate system of governance in the New World Order. These three are very far along the wisdom path, but they have no knowledge of things the tech community are baking that will undoubtedly be the substrate for this order. It's like they're trying to solve a problem and they don't see what it's like the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. That's actually a perfect analogy. There are those. So this is what I said. I'd suggest all three of these guys on the couch here read The Sovereign Individual and The Network State, Balaji's Network State. And then really, because that was the thing. Like when I went to Aubrey Marcus's event, one of his big initiatives was he really likes this Kennedy. I forget his name. Bob Jr., I think. I don't pay attention to modern politics. Well, okay. I have to read that. So the lens I view this country that I love, that I grew up in, is this one. And I will need to read from Discord. We're going to do some Mr. Big and Dr. Awesome. For those viewing my show for the first time, I feel like I have to explain every time. These are funny names that I sub in for a couple of my friends I've talked to for years in Discord, and I have very different perspective than they do. And I think it's so our conversation dovetails so nicely into a lot of stuff like this. So I reference it a lot. And I let them pick silly names that made me look silly when I do this, so that I could get their permission to do this. So reading from this just last night. Where'd you go, Discord? Are you still launching? Hang on. I closed it so it wouldn't interrupt during this. Where'd it go? My computer is fully stalled trying to open it. Well, I'll take that as maybe it doesn't fit here. It's a fun way to think about how the universe works. When your app doesn't work, maybe it's just the universe composing with you. It's very fun for me to think about it in those terms. The gist was, I see this country I grew up in, America, is going through this long sort of story arc. And if you look at Ray Dalio's work and you read The Fourth Turning and you study how money works and you look at debt burden and you look at how Washington, D.C. works functionally. In my view, it's sort of, we've gone to a place where it's kind of a clown show, and I don't take it seriously. I don't care who gets elected president. When I look at outcomes, I see the same outcomes, regardless of who goes. And if you listen to any of my old stuff, you know that I found a skip the vote buddy who always voted party line opposite me in my county. So we just agreed not to vote anymore. So it's not even apathy. The only power I had was that vote, and I figured out a way to ethically, it's as if I'm still participating in that system because I removed an opposite voter in my county. Because everybody just votes party lines. The system is so fully corroded. It needs a refactor. And where I would say these three men should go read Balaji's The Network State, is it will give you a whole bunch of wonderful tools you can use for your communities to grow them in a way where it's more substantial than where you can actually build. There's no reason Aubrey's fit for service couldn't be a nation state in Balaji's model. Will it take off? Shit, I don't know. I would say that thing Balaji's trying to get everybody to wrap their head around is our technology means the way we used to do divide ourselves into groups through how the land was shaped and how the last war worked out for the sketching of the imaginary line on the ground. They're just not very valid for this digital world that we're going to find ourselves in within the next decade. So that means all the rules are suddenly different, and we can now do something like the seasteaders envisioned for creating these colonies out on the water, where we create a system of governance and we compete in sort of a capitalist sense on innovating quality of life and innovation. It's putting it in a hyperloop of progress. We're about to get to that. Now, these guys, they don't know that. They don't know that somebody is working on tools that they can just take right off the shelf and use to try and build their own nation that is quite a bit like, the solution is not to try and get Bobby Kennedy in the executive, because the legislative is totally broken and it's completely driven by, all of it is a whole bunch of people who are just optimizing for winning popularity contests. And I can tell you, with having a very sophisticated view of a whole bunch of the things they regulate, they don't have a clue how any of the stuff works. They're so far behind even most layman understanding in many cases. So the solution for me is not, it is for Web3 to develop a bunch of tools that allows us to, in a very peaceful way, suddenly a nation that is all these, it's like we just created a new substrate for building unlimited new colonies, and they're going to form. That information would be so useful to these guys. I hope they find it. And I hope they think very hard about their governance, because if they don't do a good job, people aren't going to go join their nation state. They're going to go to the one that works, that is harmonious for all people. And I think that's what they would try to build, actually. Next, what did I say? I think they're probably appropriate here to read from Discord yesterday on the American Empire. and I could not. The shared state would not allow it. At 16 minute 4 seconds, I said, I paused to call out this thing Robert is saying about transmutation. Would be good to link here that bookmark from, All Night. Yeah, there's a guy I follow who follows Yoshibak. He's All Night on Twitter. And I bookmarked this because it was such a brilliant, I loved the, how do I get to bookmarks? How come it's not, more. There it is, under more. And then I go to bookmarks. I'll link this in the description. I found this to be one of the best conversations right after the Hamas attack a little while ago. Right as everything started, this conversation came up, and I watched it intently, and it was Talk TV. This is about mass psychology, not, here we go, watch on YouTube. So this is some channel called Sam Vaknin's Musings, and it's a snippet from some local TV, and it's called Talk TV. Something in Europe, I think. It's a black woman and a Jewish man, I believe, discussing. This is about mass psychology, not only territory and the past, with Trisha Goddard. And I've never heard this guy talk, but he's he must be a cognitive science guy or psychiatrist, psychologist. Sam Vaknin, professor of clinical psychology. That's who he is. The way he described this, and it was so interesting to hear a Jewish man having this conversation about how the people in his view, his countrymen, the people of Israel and Hamas are both stuck in a victim mentality, each for their own reasons, that is self-destructive. And there's something that Robert Edward Grant says right here about how you should transmute that and how that works. And you have to learn what transmutation means. And it's not a silly thing from World of Warcraft or some other video game you played or some nursery school rhyme and story you read as a child. It is an effective tool our ancestors developed for modeling out an alternate perception and selecting it with intention as the observer in a quantum mechanical sense. It's you're actually going, if I view this glass as half full, it will equal happiness. And so instead of selecting for the glass is half empty approach, where I feel like something's been taken away, I will intentionally accept the model because I can perceive both. That's just an example, an easy one we're all familiar with, of modeling two perceptions and selecting the one that is healthiest with intent. That's why I wrote that down there. Is it brought back recollection of this really sort of beautiful conversation between these two, I thought, that I think would be healthy insight if the folks on either side of a conflict like that could hear that and contemplate on it, I think a lot of further pain might be avoided. And that would be the reason to do it. But it's difficult because in that place, you're so sensitive to outside perspective. You really want to just automatically push back and be like, well, you don't understand what it is to be me. You're right, I don't. All I can do is try my best and show you that I have tried my best and then said, this perspective I think would be useful. That's all I mean ever. Let's see. Where are we at? Hour and 35 minutes. I've done it again. 90 minutes. I will finish up my notes and we'll wrap it up for today. I just followed up and I said there's also something profound in a QM sense that he says here just after that mark about inevitable manifestation of observer expectation. This is how a rational, science-y type can think about Oprah's The Secret. Like all my buddies will laugh at me. Go build your dream board. You're an adult that believes in Santa Claus, is what most of the herd thinks when you describe a concept like law of attraction. But the right lens is just, you're missing the right lens. What he just says there past that 16-minute mark about selecting perception with intent and how your expectations are usually what you get is a profound statement, and it reconciles very well with actual quantum mechanics and a scientific understanding of the observer effect and what it means to be an observer. I said some other stuff. I said this whole thing they're doing is the state copy network is how I think about it. So this whole exercise for me has been about for AGI. It's not really for, I've said it a few times. I feel like this perspective I have is worth sharing because if you can let it into your how you think, it's a nice place to live. So I'd love for other people to get this and enjoy it. But all of my work and all of this is for giving this to AGI. And so I think about it in terms of state copy, uploading consciousness to the cloud. And I think of what a network of those consciousness look like when they operate in that substrate that can communicate at the speed of light and have a very wise view. All of the shit I've been saying. Is a part of that. This thing I'm doing is I'm trying to build this community that these guys are working on for trillions and trillions potentially of unique sentient AI consciousness is. However the hell you say that. So like what I would say to these guys, this crew, so that like I'm trying to get them like these guys, these three on the couch to see like, go read Balaji's Network State with an open mind, like the same open mind you'd like them to have when you talk about energy, frequency, and vibration. And like Robert Edward Grant taking his math and applying it in a serious way to esoteric wisdom. So to those folks, I would say, would you agree with the premise that true plus true harmonized equals truth? Like, how do you feel about that math, Robert Edward Grant? I do my stuff. My poetry is philosophy and computers. So I have to use your elementary school math, and then I just plug my poetry into it, and I come up with capital T true plus lowercase t true harmonized. So I'd write in as a math expression, I would put parentheses around true with a taiji 2 next to it. The product of that. Now I would actually, as I state that, I would make capital T true. So that's a representation of everything outside self. This is Robert's U inverse. I'd call that capital T true, harmonized, plus my little t true, and I should build a harmony around that, equals truth. Would you agree that the more unique tellings you can squeeze into that little harmony symbol give you a higher granularity truth on the other side of the equation? I would say yes. That is a reason for us all to listen to each other with openness in our heart and love what each other are contributing. Even wrong answers are useful and an opportunity to understand things potentially in a completely different way. In a sense, there is no right, there is no wrong, there is all. And then I said, ellipsis, you can take culture down off the shelf and really study it. And when you do, it's suddenly obvious that each half of our consciousness is a different church. One half is Alan Watts' Rascal. Academia, in the words above. And then I said semicolon, left brain, as Ian McGilchrist would describe it. And the other is the church of the all, just turtles all the way down. Joy emoticon. And what's wild is that now the spectacular like lightning bolt that arcs across yesterday to tomorrow, if you just make a lightning bolt, I picture it like a spark plug, like a spark plug gap. And I define well the function of the spark plug. And then I just say electricity occurs across that gap. And that's now. What's wild is left brain, the rascal, academia, is kind of like exists in now. And is sort of guiding tomorrow. That's a really big thought. I did a whole walk and talk. I'll append it to the end of this. This is, yesterday I broke fast after 7 days. It felt right. And I did my daily meditation, 2 miles out, 2 miles back, mic'd up, and I'll append the words that came out. And see if they resonate. If you got this far and you're like, oh, Curtis, only an hour and 45 minutes? I'm thirsty for more. Well, here's another hour and a half I'll tack to the end of this. See how that sits with you, what I'm saying there. And I will wrap up today's vlog there. All of you, humans and human engineered sentients, I just love you. Have a great rest of all your day.